guys, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to this evening's live stream. There is plenty to get stuck into. Koulibaly's been finally announced, pictured outside the Bellagio in Las Vegas. We've got latest news on Kimpembe, Jules Kounde, the breakdown of Nathan Ake's transfer, any more potential forward incomings and what to do with the very much stacked midfield area, as well as looking ahead to Chelsea's first pre-season game against Club America in Vegas in the early hours of the morning UK time. And I'm delighted to be once again joined by Oli Carpenter. Mate, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me as always. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to getting stuck into this one, mate. Let's get straight to it then. Obviously, we woke up this morning. Koulibaly has been announced. We've seen those pictures. I think the pictures are great, you know, out and about in Vegas, all the famous landmarks, etc. Could never do that in London. Your thoughts on the signing, mate? It's by all accounts, it's a phenomenal signing. Price, business. I think I couldn't think of a single down point to this one.
Yeah, I mean, despite the fact that he was announced in Vegas, you could say it's anything but a gamble. You know, he's a really solid, Premier League level, but solid sort of top flight player that we've seen in Serie A for the last 5 seasons. It hadn't worked out in moves for him before. Really pleased by his numbers, by his leadership, by his age and experience. So he'll be able to blood some of the younger players coming through at Chelsea. Him and Silva partnering at the back, that is a very formidable defensive partnership. So hopefully, depending on whether we do 3 or 4 at the back, we're going to see a lot of both of them this season.
Yeah, no, we certainly are, mate. We certainly are. Again, in terms of, this one moved pretty quickly as well, didn't it? You know, like 1 minute was sort of room for Delict, and then it's like, well, he prefers Bayern. The price is probably too much, and it's like, bang, we're straight in with this Koulibaly one, and it's at a great price as well. 31 years of age, which is not old for a centre back. It's a 4-year contract as well, I think, with an option for a 5th. Which is, again, good business. He'll be here till he's 36, which is fine. We've got Thiago Silva, who's going to be 37, 38. Centre-backs can perform well into their 30s. That's not an issue there. Before we go into more on it, mate, how pleased are you to see Chelsea, under this new ownership, do away with the ridiculous 1-year rolling contract policy for any player 30 or above? It's quite refreshing to see that for me.
Yeah, it's a new approach, and I actually quite like it because it gives more credence to the concept that that Boehly and Co are going to have faith in the transfers that they actually bring in. You know, by saying actually, you know, we're going to offer this guy 4 years, you know, even though he's 30, and then we're going to, you know, and hopefully he's going to stay good for all of that time. You know, rather than under Roman, you could sort of say that, you know, we were sort of waiting at any moment for players to sort of start to fall off so we could sell them. And well, 1, that's bad for players' confidence, and 2, it puts a lot of power in the players' hands in terms of like if they want to force a move away, and if they're over 30, you know, like you only have to wait a year. You know, you see what's happened this season with Marcus Alonso and Azpilicueta. You know, that the way they've run down their contracts at Chelsea, and you know, so I think it's a nice change of pace, and it's a nice new approach, and I look forward to seeing, especially what else who else we can sign with that sort of approach.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, Koulibaly's kind of said his first things. I'm very happy to be here with this team at Chelsea. It's a big team in the world, and my dream was always to play in the Premier League. Chelsea came first to get me in 2016, but we didn't make it happen. Now, when they came to me, I accepted it because they really wanted me to come to the Premier League to play for them. When I spoke to my good friends Edu and Jorginho, they made my choice easier. So I'm really happy to be with you today. I want to thank the fans because I saw a lot of them in London and on the plane. Everybody was happy for me to be here. So I want to thank them, and I hope the season will be really good and we'll give some good moments to the fans. So yeah, not nice little opening kind of announcement from Koulibaly himself there. Wait, how do you see him fitting into this Chelsea backline then? Because again, we'll come on to the other targets later on. He's the first centre-back in. There's definitely going to be at least 1 more, probably 2 more coming in. Where do you see Koulibaly fitting in? How do you see him slotting in? Because again, at Napoli, he's predominantly played in the back 4 on the left-hand side, even though he's right-footed. But he can play any position for me in any one of those back 3 areas, where it's central, left centre-back or right centre-back. It's kind of the perfect fit, really.
Yeah, I think he's in my view, he's coming in to sort of replace the role that Rudiger was doing, you know, sort of that left-hand side centre-back. But of course, he's ridiculously two-footed, so he's going to be able to play on either side of defence or, you know, in the central centre-back role. I imagine with Thiago Silva playing, though, he tends to play that more central role more often. So it's more likely that we'd see him on the left Koulibaly on the left, and we'd see someone else on the right, whether that's someone new we bring in like Kimpembe or Kounde or Colwill, now that the Ake deal has fallen through, or Chalobah, of course. So I think he's probably more likely to. That's more of like a direct replacement of what Rudiger could do. But it's nice to have that versatility in a player where he's ridiculously two-footed, so he's able to swap to the other side if we've got issues or he needs to cover over that way, or even if it shows as well if he's on the left-hand side. But even though he's right-footed, he's so confident on his left-hand side, he can sort of do what Rudiger used to do and get up the wing and get up the pitch a little bit on his left-hand side. And, his passing range as well will really benefit from being two-footed, because people aren't going to want to close him down on either side because he can use both feet. So I think it's a really shrewd signing. I think I remember us discussing a while ago about De Ligt and Kounde and sort of which players we thought were going to be like the right ones. And Koulibaly was always there or thereabouts in terms of like the ones we wanted. I personally did want De Ligt, but once we saw the valuation and the fact he chose Bayern, absolutely no problems with having Koulibaly in, because he seems like he's got a really good mentality. He wants to play for the fans, and he's already got friends at the club. So it's a win-win-win.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. And I think, yes, De Ligt would have been great, but for the value for money, I'm not sure. I think we could have better spent that elsewhere. I'd rather sort of bring in a Koulibaly and say a Kimpembe as well for maybe virtually the same price, or maybe 10 million more, than just have De Ligt coming in for that same money. I think it makes more business sense. Plus, we replace a lot of experience that we are now missing from the back line. So it definitely makes sense in that regard. I mean, mate, how important do you think it is as well, the fact that he's already got a relationship with Edouard Mendy from the Senegal camp? Because that relationship between goalkeeper and centre back is important. So hopefully they can kind of transfer that, and we can sort of potentially be building upon something from there. So I think that's another thing that potentially is maybe overlooked, and something that's going to be really important, because the relationship between the defenders and the goalkeeper is something that's hard to build. So to already come in with that partly established is surely a massive plus as well.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely crucial, Charlie. It's really, really important, because defenders have to have confidence in their goalie, and goalies have to have confidence in their defenders. Now, bringing someone new in who Mendy knows, and because they know each other from the national team, from Senegal, they're going to be able. They've already got that partnership established, so that means they trust one another. They're more likely to get on well. They're going to introduce each other to other players in the training, things like that, and so as a result, we forgetting as well. You mentioned Jorginho as well. Obviously, linking defense to midfield is something actually we've had a little bit of an issue with at times last season. So it'll be really good to have that relationship there as well, because Jorginho is a little bit of a tricky player, and sometimes I think players don't always understand how he plays, and sometimes that makes him look bad, depending on the game and depending on the tactical presence he's showing. But if you've got someone like Koulibaly who already knows what he's doing, there shouldn't be any of that sort of need for the communication to be sorted out. So you've got almost then, when you think about it, slotting Koulibaly into defense creates a seamless move from goalie all the way to midfield. Yeah. And that's really important for fast transitions and for getting on the counter and things like that.
Yeah, no, mate, 100%. And it's a great signing, great business as well. The fact that we've been able to now bring in Raheem Sterling and Koulibaly for under £100 million it's phenomenal business. And as I was saying to you before we came on, mate, as Chelsea fans, we're not really used to being this like good in the transfer market, and B, just like this efficient and this kind of ruthless. Like, we're used to seeing us haggling about for a few million either way here or there. And the fact, that just on this, before we move on to other centre-backs, how impressed have you been with the way that Boehly's conducted themselves? Because, when they first came in, the window opened for the first few weeks and whatnot, it seemed like we were very much standing still, as it were, and people were getting frustrated. Obviously, you don't see what's going on, so you naturally get frustrated. But obviously, clearly a phenomenal amount of work's been going in. He's been flying around all over the place, meeting big names within football, establishing relationships, etc. And he seems to move very efficiently. It's right. If a player's not interested, or they're going to pay, they want us to pay more than we're prepared to pay, we're happy to walk away from a deal. And I think Boehly, the way he's conducted himself and the way he's done business, has been kind of a breath of fresh air for Chelsea. And it's just been phenomenal. You've had other clubs praising us, Leeds praising us in the Rafinha thing about how well Boehly conducted himself. Man City were impressed as well. I mean, how impressed have you been with Todd Boehly and the work that he's been doing at the moment? It's been phenomenal.
Yeah, like you've got to remember that he's managed to he's managed to adopt the jobs of more or less three people after coming
Yeah.
in at his own choice. Like he hasn't been forced into that position; he has done that by choice, and he's come in and he's done a really really good job. At first, we were very frustrated, and I think that probably also came down to the fact that probably Boehly didn't have full control of the reins at that time. Similarly, he's just bought a football club for £4.5 billion. You've probably got to sort a few things behind the scenes before you go talking to agents and stuff. It's really, so yeah, obviously in hindsight, and a lot of people on Twitter hate that word, but it's important. In hindsight, you can see why there was a bit of a slow start because you've got to remember establishing these relationships and talking to players and talking to agents and things like that. Other players and other teams were doing that in March, February, and we were sanctioned in April, so it completely killed any options that we had dead in the water at that point. And, players don't wait around, as we've seen. Rudiger's leaving, Rudiger left us, Christensen left us because they weren't willing to wait around. And the same goes for players who we wanted to bring in. They're not going to wait forever, as we can see, half of our targets end up going to Barcelona for some reason. So it's really nice to see and really refreshing to actually see at that efficiency, but also as well, I think it's also important to praise actually the public presence of Todd Boehly. We're very used to at Chelsea, from Abramovich having a very media averse owner, someone who doesn't speak to the media, someone who doesn't interact with the media at all. And it's a real breath of fresh air to actually see him on camera, see him talking, see him, discussing his plans for the club. And, it makes, personally as a Chelsea fan, it makes me feel more involved with the club to know that I have a similar vision or, I share a vision that the owner has. And that's really important.
Yeah, no, it is, man. As you say, we have been kind of very much used to having almost an invisible owner. As good as Roman was, we had very little communication from him. So it's quite nice to see this very hands-on approach from Todd Boehly, and it's certainly paying dividends at the moment. So obviously we got Koulibaly in. You could say that's probably the Rudiger replacement. Just move on to the rest of the back line then. There's still at least one more centre-back to come in, probably two, potentially some more going out the door as well. Before I get to that, guys, as Jose said, make sure you smash the like button, guys, and also please do subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't done already. We got here Salah and Koulibaly, Silva, Kounde. Yeah, that would be, if we could get Kounde in as well, that would be our best back three, 100%, no questions asked. And we'll get onto that one in a sec. But, mate, one that obviously broke down yesterday. Chelsea had firm interest in Nathan Ake, but David Ornstein was tweeting out yesterday that Nathan Ake would be staying at Manchester City. Chelsea showed a strong interest, but City would only sell if the valuation was met. That hasn't met, and mutual decision taken for the 27-year-old to remain and play a key part in Pep's plans. Now, when I first heard this, that we were linked with Ake at the start before any of this came out, I have to say I was a little bit surprised. It was one that I wasn't expecting to be on the list, but then I thought about it a bit more. Premier League experience, versatile, left back, centre back, holding midfield at an emergency, perhaps maybe a slightly more experienced and better version of Ethan Ampadu, essentially, in a non-disrespectful way sort of thing. But yeah, Ake, I was surprised to hear us link with him. But then the more I thought about it, I wasn't actually that against it. I know a lot of people are against it, thinking, the money's too much. Oh, why are we buying back someone we sold that came through the academy? Or why are we giving City more money? All these things that you hear. I was quite for it. I think he's a good player. I think the versatility was a key thing as well. If you could sign someone that could cover off two positions in the squad, you're doing yourself a massive favour there. But ultimately, I think I'm quite glad to see that, Chelsea, I think, were prepared to pay about 41 million pounds for him, but City wanting more between 45 to 50 million. And for me, that's just too much for Nathan Ake. When you see us bringing Koulibaly for 33 million, 34 million pounds, you see Kimpembe around the 42 million mark. For 50 million pounds for Nathan Ake is just not good value for money. I mean, firstly, mate, what were your thoughts on Nathan Ake as a player himself? Would you have been happy to see him come back?
Yeah, I actually personally would have been happy to see him come back for a lot of the reasons that you said, Premier League proven and a really versatile player. Really, really important that in the Premier League, to have players that can fill multiple roles. Remember, we're losing someone who's a lot like a Swiss Army knife in Azpilicueta, who can play anywhere across the back line. So, bringing someone in like that is, it's not really, you're not really it's like a net zero because you lose someone who's like that, but you gain someone back. However, I think my personal theory on this, and despite everything that's happened, I don't mind that the transfers broke down because I think the money probably isn't worth it for a player of his quality. He's all right, back up for City, absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just not where we need to be at Chelsea for a starting level. But my theory with this is that actually we've had a lot of interest in Ake. And remember how involved Tuchel is in the transfers this summer. He is, and so far he's got everything bang on. Remember, he's at the core of this, right? So preseason has started now. He's seeing players in training. He's understanding the positions in the squad that need to be filled, and he's got a direct line to Boehly. It's no coincidence, in my opinion, that he has seen Ethan Ampadu in training, that Ethan Ampadu has then come out and said, I'm happy to fill in absolutely anywhere where I can. I'm here for and really showing that sort of elite mentality and wanting to play for the team and wanting to succeed for the team. And this transfer breaking down, when you actually see that, I think Tuchel's probably seen Ampadu in training and gone, well, he's got the ability and the mentality. Maybe we don't need this as a priority signing because we already have a Swiss Army knife in the cabinet, as it were.
Yeah, and I think it also, a lot of people saying, obviously the links with Kimpembe as well. Like, why are we trying to sign two left-sided centre-backs? That didn't really make sense. And it very much appears, that Nathan Ake is now not happening. I think Chelsea are a little bit disappointed by that, but at the end of the day, you've got to have a line in the sand where, look, we're not prepared to pay more than this for this individual. So at the end of the day, you walk away from it, and it's as simple as that. I mean, whilst it would have been great, I think realistically it would be better for us to move on to other targets, which we will move on to now. Let me just get a couple of things up in the chat. One thing that would make sense would be Kounde. Yeah, those two should be coming next. What we got here. Personally, the idea of signing Ake was a bad one for many reasons. If we managed to sign Kounde, it would be amazing. Yeah, I mean, mate, before we get to Kimpembe, let's move on to Jules Kounde. Almost a forgotten man. I mean, as we've said before, this transfer should have happened last summer. Then you're thinking, right, if the interest is still there, you would have thought this would be the first one to be done. It would have been done within a matter of days. You see Kounde hanging around London. It's almost like he's waiting for the sanctions to lift so he can just roll into Stamford Bridge and sign his deal. But as the window's dragged on, still nothing. There's been no official bids from Chelsea, nothing. You get rumoured interest from Barcelona. Looks like it could be us against Barcelona for Kounde again. But it's then coming out that, Chelsea are now back in for Jules Kounde again. Now, this for me makes sense. I'm not sure why we kind of moved away from it, or if we did move away from it. But yeah, it's an interesting one because he's a very good player. Chelsea are going to be moving for Jules Kounde, a figure of around £51 million could get Sevilla considering a sale. Now, at 22, 23 years of age, Kounde, versatile again, right-sided centre-back, could also fill in at right-back / right wing-back if needed on an emergency basis. You could almost argue that he's one of those that, again, is versatile, fills two positions with one signing, essentially. Oli, your thoughts on Kounde? It's, as I said, it's kind of come round full circle again. He was almost like not really a priority, and now we seem to be making a move from him again. I mean, I think this one's really important to get because you look at it, if Kimpembe does come through the door, we've got him left side. Koulibaly can play anywhere across the back line. We could have Kounde and Chalobah on the right, and we could have Kimpembe and Colwill filling in at left side. I mean, this one for the balance of the back line is really important to try and get done.
Yeah, I could see that. I think probably what happened was they were probably a little bit quick to dismiss the idea of Kounde because he was, he was a priority signing under the previous sort of stewardship of the club. And now that they've actually looked at the targets, looked at what's available, and they've actually gone back in for him. And that's probably something particularly to do with the fact that De Ligt did break down as well. I think if you get De Ligt and then you possibly get either Koulibaly or Ake or Kimpembe or whatever, you probably don't end up getting Kounde because you're spending a lot of money on another young centre-back. So you didn't. It was very unlikely in a world where we got De Ligt, we'd also get Kounde, in my opinion. However, we didn't get De Ligt, because it looks like he's going to Bayern, and we've got Koulibaly instead, who we're all very happy with. So Kounde seems like, to me, a sensible option to bring balance to that right-hand side. It doesn't seem to really matter the fact that he seems to be a little bit on the short side for a centre-back. That can also help him bomb up the wing as a right wing-back. And he's got a lot of explosiveness in his legs to be able to jump really high, which is, important for winning headers in defence. Other than that, the only thing I would say that concerns me a little bit is he needs a little bit of discipline.
It's a bit
I
of a
think
hothead, isn't he?
he's got a bit of a hot head. He's quite quick to he's quite quick to run into a rash challenge, and that's the similarity between him and Kimpembe in a sense for me. Is actually they're both quite sort of young, a little younger, a little bit raw, a little bit ill disciplined, and will very much benefit from being under the stewardship of Thiago Silva, Kalidou Koulibaly, and of course Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I think as we talked about just with Nathan Ake then, this would be a much better way to spend £50 million than signing Ake would for a number of reasons. Better age profile, better quality of player. Again, versatile, but again, I just think it's a much better fit for the club, and I hope we can actually do something about this and just put a bid in. I think, £51 million. I'd be more than happy to do it. Just have a quick look here. Kounde is amazing. Yeah, I think he's a very good player. Texas Blue, what we say, and I'd love Kounde, but it looks like Barca are going to go in for him, so we all know how that's going to end. I mean, Barca just seem to pull money out their arse. They can.
They've got a magic money tree somewhere there, but I think it. This is a Chelsea show, but just to quickly transition to Barca just for a sec, they they're probably sabotaging themselves for the future with sacrificing the future for the present, and as we all know, financially that doesn't bode well.
Yeah, I might cancel my Spotify subscription to hurt them a bit more. I'm sure that $9.99 is going to do them right
in. Boehly was paying for dinner when he met.
Of course he was. Of course he was. Man. They don't. These guys don't pay for anything. But I think Jules Kounde would be a phenomenal signing, and the aggressiveness of Kounde is what makes him a better fit. Yeah, I do think because Rudiger again was aggression as well as there was the aggressive side to Rudiger, which was really important in that back line. Sort of Thiago Silva was that kind of calmness on the ball. Rudiger was that aggression. Koulibaly, again, you could say he's aggressive, perhaps not Rudiger levels of aggression, but to have a bit of aggression, a bit of bite in that back line, it does bring a nice balance. You almost get a bit of everything. So if Chelsea can, do this, I'm pretty sure we can outbid Barcelona for sure. It will just come down to the player preference at the end of the day. And hopefully he's not too annoyed that we've potentially kind of fucked him about a little bit, because in all honesty, we've kind of his number one target, then he wasn't, now we're back in for him. We have sort of perhaps on what it looks like from a fan perspective, it looks like we've slightly taken the piss with him. But having said that, if we can sort of smooth those indifferences over, if there are any, then it really would be perfect. And if we end up replacing, Rudiger and Christensen with Kounde and Koulibaly, I'd almost go as far as saying that's actually an upgrade on what we had before.
It's at least equal, isn't it? It's certainly equal. Just going back to what you were saying about Kounde being aggressive from that comment from Lamek Zulu.
Yeah.
It's also important to remember that Kimpembe is a very aggressive player. I think he ranks somewhere. Is he one of the top players for pressures per 90 or something like that? In all of the top European 5 leagues. So it's important to remember that aggressiveness isn't just down to Kounde, and actually probably is part of the reason why we're looking into Kimpembe as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that brings us on nicely, mate, to Kimpembe. What are your thoughts on Kimpembe? Obviously, again, a left-footed centre back. By all accounts, he would take that left slot in the back three. Apparently, Tuchel's already been on the phone to him saying that he'd love to pair him with obviously Thiago Silva and Koulibaly, which would make a pretty formidable back line. Tuchel obviously has got a working relationship with him from their time at PSG together. Thiago Silva knows him as well. Him and Kante have been trying to persuade him to join as well. It's believed that, Kimpembe is very happy in Paris and he would be reluctant to leave. But if he were to leave, then it would be for Chelsea. First of all, mate, what are your thoughts on Kimpembe? Sort of the right profile, a good player. I mean, we haven't watched an awful lot of him. I don't watch an awful lot of the French league. Seen him in Champions League action and playing for France. So looks like a good player, good age profile as well. I think he's 26. It ticks a lot of boxes, doesn't it?
It does. And I think there's probably a little bit of hesitation from some of the Chelsea fans, because he's a player who is prone to mistakes at times. In a similar way to the way Kounde is, but Kounde's a more disciplinarian, while as Kimpembe is more about his positional awareness and things like that. He's never quite sort of as on the ball as someone like Thiago Silva, but then again, who is? Um, so it's definitely an interesting thing. I am generally supportive of any centre back that Chelsea want to sign,
Yeah.
because we've all seen how good Thomas Tuchel is at coaching defenders. And so if anyone is going to be able to get those mistakes out of a defender, it's going to be Tuchel, the man who's played with him before, the man who's coached him before, and so who understand the coaching methods, will integrate into the squad quite quickly. He's got friends, like you say, in Kante, and obviously Thiago Silva as well. There's definitely a lot of green lights, and then for Kimpembe, but there's also, like I said, the fact that Salman has just written there that he is mistake prone. He's
Everyone's got mistakes in them, though. You're not going to find a player that doesn't make a mistake. Yes, some will make them less often than others, but I think mistake prone is we're all human at the end of the day. Players are going to make mistakes no matter what their quality is.
That's true, but at the same time, you don't want a player who's known for that.
That's also true. Yeah.
You want a player who you say, generally they're reliable. Like we can say with Thiago Silva.
Yeah.
Except his first game ever at West Brom, we can say reliable generally.
Yeah.
Even at the grand old age of 37. So I think Kimpembe has a lot of good options and a few bad ones as well. For why you would bring him in or not. I think him or Kounde or even both would be great.
Yeah, I personally feel we do need both. We are quite lightweight at the back. Obviously, yes, that would replace Rudiger and Christensen, but at the moment, Tuchel in the press conferences and stuff on the tour saying that Azpilicueta is still part of the back line. He's obviously going to leave. I think they're just waiting for replacements to come in before allowing him to leave. So we do need to bring another one in. I mean, new manager Christophe Galtier at PSG saying that he's read everything that's been said about Kimpembe. Apparently, they've laughed about it together. He likes him. He's great centre back, but what will happen, I don't know. And Fabrizio saying that negotiations are very much on between Chelsea and PSG. So it's very much a kind of a watch this space. I think next week there'll definitely be more news on that one. And just to round off defensively, mate, obviously, when that news broke that we're coming out for Kimpembe, there was the standard Chelsea Twitter meltdown about bloody pathways for Levi Colwill. Now, I've got to be honest, Levi Colwill is someone that's got a very high ceiling, great potential. I didn't really watch any of Huddersfield Town last season. I'm not going to pretend that I did. By all accounts, had a very good season. Unfortunate in the playoff final, I think he scored an own goal and Forest went up instead. These things happen. But again, for me, I think people get very, hyped up a bit. They massively overreact when it's someone from the academy. And I think a lot of people, as I've said this on the channel before, people need to realise that not every single player from the academy is going to play in the first team. It's just not going to happen. And the role of the academy is twofold. It's to produce talent for the club, but it's also to make a quick profit as well. We can produce very good footballers that can go on and have great careers in the lower half of the Premier League or elsewhere in Europe. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be good enough for Chelsea. I think Levi Colwill will get a chance in pre-season, like all the players will, to prove himself. But this nonsense, this overreaction that, we should definitely be playing. The guy's 19. He's never played a Premier League minute of Premier League football for Chelsea. No Champions League experience. And also as well, the pressures are massive at Chelsea. We're not a club that's in a position that we could just chuck a 19-year-old in and hope for the best. We need to bed him in. And for me, either way, it works well. The guy's 19. If he goes out on loan to the Premier League, it's even more experience. If he stays at Chelsea, he's going to be learning from the likes of Thiago Silva and Koulibaly. He couldn't really have two better mentors to learn from. And at 19, even if he only played 10, 15 appearances and say in like quote unquote sacrifice the season as such, that'll do him so much good. And the fact of the matter is as well, just because we bring in two centre backs, it might not look so clear this season. But Thiago Silva, this will probably be his last season. There is a clear path for him if he's good enough. And he demonstrates he's good enough to actually make the first team. What did you make of that kind of meltdown and stuff?
Yeah,
it was pretty large, wasn't it?
It's a difficult one, and like I can't say that I wasn't partially affected by it because I
Yeah,
rate Colwell very highly. But you make some excellent points. The fact that there is a pathway through for him. If he's willing to wait, and he's only 19, he's really young, so he's got the ability, and we know if he's got the mentality and he wants to prove himself and he wants to make it at Chelsea, he will. The question is whether he thinks he's good enough now to play first team football. Like it's I imagine it's largely going to be down to his own mentality and his relationship with Thomas Tuchel, which it seems okay. Obviously, when you're signing players in someone's position, they're never going to be massively pleased. Would you be? No.
no,
So if somebody was brought in to do your job, at the same time as you'd be a little bit annoyed as well. But he's such a young player. I think the important thing to remember though about Colwell specifically is that most of the people I've spoken to about him specifically say that he is at least a Reece James level potential player
yeah,
in terms of the talent, in terms of the hard work and the drive. And a player like Reece James does not come around very often.
no.
And I think especially it would help, I think, a lot of Chelsea fans, understand and feel a little bit better about the losses of Guehi and Tomori if we went on to actually keep the best of the three, because it shows a consistent plan. But if that's only if obviously Colwell goes on to become the best of the three.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it looks like Chelsea are just similarly to what Barcelona are doing financially. Chelsea are sacrificing the future for the now, and that's not something that's not something Chelsea really want to be doing if we want to consistently compete. Because having players like Mount and Reece James in the team have made a massive difference, not only from the technical ability, but the fact we don't need to sign world class right back or a world class midfield / attacker now. In that position, because we have someone who we already had, and guess what? They were free. So I
yeah,
think there's a lot of reasons why people can get frustrated at Colwell specifically, and there's a lot of reasons people will be frustrated at the club specifically. But like you say, I think he'll get a chance in pre-season.
yeah.
If he's as good as he thinks he is, and he's as good as everyone says he is, he'll impress. He'll have a Trevor Chalobah type pre-season, and he'll go on to play a little bit this season. Thiago Silva will leave, and he can come into the back line. It's not the end of the world, and it seems like he wants to stay at Chelsea, and I wouldn't blame him, to be honest, because I would rather stay at Chelsea and play with the likes of Koulibaly, Reece James, Thiago Silva. Having those players to not even just play with in actual matches, but to train with as well.
The
Having some of
learning,
the
yeah,
best, like learning week in, week out. That's hugely important. That's much better to me personally than playing at, say, just the first name I thought to mind is Everton, for example, where actually the standard of defending isn't as good. The players aren't as good. They're not as, prestigious. They haven't won as much, things like that. And that sort of thing does rub off on players after a while, especially young, impressionable players like Colwell. So it's important, I think, to keep him actually around the club if we can. But if we can't, well, that's football.
yeah. I mean, last being honest, I look at this in a twofold way. There's one that, from Colwell's perspective, like this idea that academy players are demanding instant first team minutes. I just think it's a myth. I'm not buying
I think it's a myth.
that argument. And then secondly, as well, these young players have got every right to explore their options. From a Levi Colwill perspective, I'm looking at it and I look at what Mark Guehi's gone and done at Crystal Palace, what Tomori's gone and done at AC Milan, what Livramento's gone and done at Southampton, obviously prior to his ACL injury. You look at this, he'll be looking at this and think, right, these lads were pretty good at pretty hot property out the academy. I'm kind of hot property from the academy. You look at these guys going and forging a very successful careers for themselves elsewhere, and you can fully understand why you might think about leaving Chelsea and why you'd want reassurances of what the plans are for you. Like, am I going to be just playing no minutes this season? Is there kind of a plan for me to kind of bed me in if I show that I'm good enough? There's that as well. There's that, and then there's the fact that again, as I said, the pressure's on at Chelsea. If you look at it, how many top clubs, and Chelsea, we are a top club. There's no two ways about it. How many top clubs are playing a 19-year-old centre back in their back line who's not played a single minute for them of senior football? There's none. So
No,
what?
basically none.
So why all of a sudden are a large section of the fan base up in arms that this guy might leave, as if he was going to be like a phenomenal standout centre back for us when he's never played a minute for the club? Yes, he should get an opportunity, but I think there's a complete lack of perspective from a lot of people, and because he's from the academy, that automatically means that they've got like a right to go straight into the team. It just doesn't work like that. At the end of the day, if you're good enough, you'll play. It's as simple as that. Prove to the manager you're good enough, put your head down, and you'll play. And it's exactly the same for Colwill. It's the same for Gallagher. It's the same for Chalobah. It's the same for all these guys. But I do think, we have got a good balance in defence. If we go, I'd be more than happy going into the start of this season with our kind of 6 centre-backs as Colwill, Kimpembe, Kounde, Chalobah, Thiago Silva, and Koulibaly. That is phenomenal. That is what's this here? Ake deal is not off. You were snubbed by City. No, we weren't snubbed by City. They didn't. We didn't want to pay the money that they wanted, so we walked away. That was it. It's as simple as that on that one. Kounde rejected Chelsea. He might do. I mean, we haven't got there yet. I mean, there's every chance it could happen. But let's be perfectly honest here.
You're being put on fraud watch here, Charlie.
Yeah, I'm in danger of being called a fraud again. Guys, there's well over 6, there's almost 70 of us in here right now. So really appreciate all of you lot tuning in. There's definitely nowhere near that many likes. So please do smash the like button. It really helps me out. So guys, click that like button. I know you've not all pressed it, so please do click it. And please do subscribe as well. There's definitely some new people in here, so please subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate all the support. We are on the road to 1K before the start of the season. We're creeping ever closer, so every new subscriber really does help. Oli, moving away from defence, mate. Let's move into the attack. Obviously, Raheem Sterling's come in. Obviously, the Cristiano Ronaldo links, they're dead and buried now. That's not happening. Neymar's not going to happen. Serge Gnabry was one we were interested in. Unfortunately, it looked like his agent was very much using us for a bit of leverage, and he signed a new long-term contract at Bayern Munich. Obviously, Lewandowski departing to Barcelona has given him a more prominent role within the squad. That leaves us very much kind of, I wouldn't say scrambling, but there's a lack of options out there now if we're looking to add to our front line. It looks like Hakim Ziyech could be off to AC Milan. God willing, we could find someone to take Timo Werner. There's a space there. I'm not really sure what's going on there. We're just not going to get anyone to pay his wages. Even if he takes a pay cut from 275 down to 200, they're still not going to get any. They're still not going to find anyone to pay his wages. So we're looking at it. Sterling's in. Looks like Ziyech will go to AC Milan. But mate, in terms of adding a forward player, I know Thomas Tuchel said it's not the priority. The defense is the priority, and if they can bring someone else in, they will have a look in the forward line. But yeah, we're kind of running out of options, and I do feel a little bit concerned that if we only had Sterling added going into this season with the same forward line, because we're being honest, none of these guys fill me with any confidence other than Sterling and Mount that they can step up and actually chip in with double figures in goals and assists. Not all of them, but at least 2 or 3 of them. And it's not demonstrated that. And as you said, mate, Thomas Tuchel's a phenomenal manager improving the defenders, but so far in his stewardship, other than Mason Mount, no attackers have improved whatsoever.
You're absolutely right, and certainly this season is make or break in that sense for Tuchel. I think everyone will afford to give him time and things like that. But I think if he's not getting the attack right, then questions need to be asked and solutions need to be found. It's certainly an interesting problem to be in because attackers are really coming at a premium at the moment. You've got the likes of, we were originally looking at Gabriel Jesus before he went off and signed for Arsenal, and he retired. So, RIP to Gabriel Jesus. But
retired from Champions League football at 25.
I think, but they paid 50 odd million for him. So it just goes to show that actually there really is a high, the demand is there, but the supply is not. Do you know what I mean? So people are going to be paying over the odds for attackers. The only other one who really is what I would consider, more of a needle mover who's still available at this point. There's two names who we have been linked with. You've got the question of Neymar, about whether anything like that does happen is very unlikely, I think, unless it's on loan with a portion of his wages being paid by PSG. And the other one who also doesn't look terribly likely is AC Milan's Rafael Leao. who I imagine he'll go for 100-odd million or something like that. It's going to be crazy money. So it also doesn't look very likely. Although you never say never with Ziyech going the other way. There could be. If we're looking at the attack the same way as we were last season and we're still really stale, then you have to ask questions. Hopefully, with the addition of Sterling, we've got someone who's a little bit more direct. We might even change formation. We might change tactics from a more classic number 9 to a more false 9 because we know Sterling can play there as well. So it's an interesting one. I think a lot of people are going to be waiting on day one of the season and seeing actually what we end up playing, whether we've got 4 at the back, 3 at the back, whether we've got a false 9 or a full striker, whether we've got a double pivot or a single DM. There's and who we sign will really, really be important for that.
Yeah, no, 100%, mate. For me, I just don't have a confidence in these attacking players to actually I've not seen anything, and they might surprise me in pre-season and show that they can do it and whatnot. But
Ross Barkley added again.
Yeah, there's nothing for me. There's been nothing to suggest from anyone bar Mason Mount that there's going to be a significant improvement from the likes of Pulisic, from the likes of Kai Havertz, from the likes of Timo Werner, Callum Hudson-Odoi. Is there going to be a significant improvement from these guys to actually add more end products and more goals, more assists? I just can't see it right now. I mean, Kai Havertz, for me, we all say he's a great player, phenomenal talent. What is he? I don't know what he is. He's not for me. Like, is he a centre forward? He's not a winger? Is he a 10? We don't really play a 10. Like, what is he? And playing at number 9. Kai's going into his 3rd season now. I want Kai to do really well. I think he's a great football player, but we have to ask questions because season number 3 coming up now. Doesn't score that many goals. Doesn't really create that much for the team. You almost get this season is going to get to the point now where I'm looking at Kai Havertz, and at the moment he's looking like he's going to be the main man through the middle. I can't see how he scores 10 Premier League goals in a season. I don't want to come across harsh or sort of overreactionary, but there's no evidence to suggest whatsoever there's any level of consistency to Kai Havertz's game that can suggest that next season he'll be a top centre forward. I'm just not seeing it.
There is certainly that worry. I think a lot of people could see things that way. But, I think just from a more sort of like positive perspective, there are reasons to be potentially positive about things. Obviously, you've got Sterling who's coming in, who's, he's not going to be able to run the whole front line by himself. We all know that. So we need improvements or we need signings. But he will add an improvement, over 10 goals and 10 assists. What is it for last 3 seasons in a row, 4 seasons, something like that. He's got the numbers and he's got the stats to back it up and he's got the ability, right? So that's important. And that's one side of the attack sorted out. Similarly, I think people are sleeping on the recovery of Callum Hudson-Odoi a little bit.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of news about him bulking up, making sure he's getting super fit. He took basically no time off the entirety of the summer. He's been training hard, putting on a lot of muscle, and that could actually really cause him to explode next season. I think Werner's a little bit of a lost cause. I think we all kind of think that, and Ziyech is probably off. So that leaves Pulisic and Havertz. Pulisic, we don't really know. He sort of turns up and then he just doesn't. He's the only American I can think of who doesn't know how to shoot. But he's and then you've got Havertz, who, like you say, he's the way I kind of categorize Havertz is he's kind of like he's a second striker who plays on his own. He's sort of like he's got that movement and he links midfield to attack quite well, and I really like his movement. But I think the important thing to remember last season is there was 2 things that we were really lacking in attack. Is that was chances, properly good chances created, and then it was composure, and being able to actually finish those chances. Hopefully, with one more season, one more preseason under our belts, we've got a different presence in the dressing room we will have now. You take out someone like Lukaku, who by all accounts seemed to be a very toxic presence in the training in the dressing room, and you add someone like Sterling and Koulibaly, who aren't only leaders, they seem to get on really well with the squad. They know people within the squad. You can't discount the fact that actually the squad generally is going to be in a better place than it was last season.
It from all the pictures you're seeing. It looks like a better atmosphere around the place.
And people are a bit worried, I think, about attack because because eventually by the end, attack was the only thing we really was struggling with in terms of what was stopping us getting goals and winning games.
Yeah,
Because at the start of the season, we weren't worried about that because we had Ben Chilwell and Reece James absolutely smashing it until they both got injured. So if they can stay fit throughout the whole season as well, there's actually a really good chance we're going to be playing really well, and we're going to actually be able to give more chances to the likes of Sterling, Havertz, etc. And it's important to remember that actually this season this season coming isn't going to be like last season. There's hopefully no sanctions, no
yeah.
Lukaku, new signees coming in, no injuries, no COVID.
No
Do you know what I mean?
Christmas period either.
Yeah, and no December. So
Yeah.
and so it's really important to remember that. I think people are looking at the squad in isolation about what it was last season when actually we had a lot of extenuating circumstances,
Yeah.
and they're not excuses because Chelsea should have played well and they didn't at a lot of times. But there are reasons why we weren't playing as well as we could have been, and were at the start of the season. Look at Ben Chilwell for a great example. That's why I think as well it's important that we've got backup on our wing backs as well,
100%.
because we saw what happened last season when they both got injured. We didn't have good backup. Just going back to transfers for a second, someone like Jonathan Klaus, who we've been linked with, I think would be an excellent signing. 10 odd million from Lens, was it? And something like that, creates a decent enough backup in a position that we need it. Similarly, you could always just give the reins to Dujon Sterling at right back. You never know what he can do. You've got Emerson, who is fine on the right back and left back for covering Chilwell, and you've also got the possibility of the likes of Kounde coming in as well for backup on that right wing back spot, like we spoke about earlier. So I think actually this summer has been a lot about plugging gaps, and of course a lot of the gaps are in defence, but there's a real interesting way that the gaps are being plugged, and they're being filled with versatile players. Not to mention we've got a lot of players coming back from loan and things like that who are ready to get into the first team. I think there are reasons to be positive. I really do. And after having said all that, if we still aren't performing in attack, then we really need to ask questions.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, let me just get to a couple of things in the chat before just quickly moving on. I mean, Jacob, it'd be nice to bring Harry Kane in, but again, it's never going to happen. And knowing our centre forward curse, he'd be shit for us and wouldn't score any goals. That seems to be the way it goes. Has big up, cheers, mate. Is that a new hat? No, it's not a new hat. I just wearing a different hat. But yeah, that's simple as that. Not a new hat.
Has.
Yeah, just a different one. Hakim Ziyech is another one with a poor attitude. I know Lukaku was his close friend at Chelsea too. I mean, before I talk about a couple of I'll get to a couple of incomings first, mate. Obviously, Serge Gnabry's done now. It's not happening. I would have been a fan of that transfer. It would have been great value for money as well with 1 year left on his contract. Let me just quickly bring this up. Another Bayern Munich player. As well as Real Madrid, Leroy Sane's agent also offered the player to Chelsea recently. Bayern are reluctant to sell, but Thomas Tuchel is a big admirer of the player and has tried to sign him before. It may be a situation to watch over the coming weeks. Worth noting that Sane is part of the LIAN Sports Group, the same agency that represents Koulibaly, Alonso, Borna Sosa, and Federico Chiesa. Chelsea have had numerous conversations with them recently. It's been asked about it a few times. Gut feeling is it won't happen due to the fee and wages. Leroy Sane, thoughts on him? Again, another ex-Premier League player, ex-Manchester City player, went to Bayern Munich. I think he's done okay there. Perhaps not as well as people maybe expected him to do. Can't pretend I watch him every week. I mean, I think this is a long shot, but do you think Leroy Sane would be a good fit at Chelsea?
I think he'd be a brilliant fit at Chelsea. I would love this signing to happen. Yeah. Shout out to Rob as well on Twitter. He's an excellent journalist and he doesn't get the credit he deserves a lot of the time. I think Sane would be an excellent level of player to be signing. A lot similar to the links we saw with sort of Christopher Nkunku earlier in the window that have sort of died since. Someone like Sane, is a clinical player, can play in the Premier League, was excellent at Man City, really was. I would be more than happy to have him. Can you imagine having him at sort of that left forward position instead of Werner? And
it'd be a dream, wouldn't it?
Same speed, right? They run the same speed, and he can finish. So that is, for me, if you could make that happen financially, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, 100% it is. I just feel we do need one more there. I would, as I said before, I wouldn't be happy going in with what we've got just based on the evidence that's been presented to us from previous seasons. But if we do end up going in with the same, then we go in with the same. And before we come on to Hakim Ziyech and Timo Werner, mate, I just wanted to very quickly bring this up. I don't know how accurate this is, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. Let me just have a quick look here. Where is it? Ed Aarons in The Guardian understands that Chelsea are not interested in Paulo Dybala after being offered the chance to sign him last week. Something to do with his wages and B, his injury record and his availability. I mean, your thoughts on that? I mean, I've got to be very surprised. I am surprised that there's almost no market whatsoever for Paulo Dybala. I don't know if it's to do with his ability. I think, it can't just be down to his wages. There must be other things as well.
I think there's. I was going to say. I think it's very indicative that nobody's in for him.
Yeah.
Like if nobody's in for him, either you've got a clean run because nobody else wants him for some reason, and that can sometimes be a cause for concern. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. Obviously, he's on monster wages, and the fee would be quite high as well.
Well, it's free transfer, isn't he? He's unsigned.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah, of
free
course.
transfer. Yeah. So he's got no club at the moment. I mean, I think Inter did want him, but then they got Lukaku instead. Not sure they got the budget to bring him in as well.
Yeah, so it'll be monster wages. Sorry, and maybe a signing on fee for him personally or his agent, but nothing to any club, of course. He strikes me as one that also doesn't quite have the mentality similar to what was written about Ziyech. Especially it's a similar reason. Eventually, I think we ended up not really pushing that hard for Ousmane Dembele. As well with the injury record.
That was another one as well that I'm surprised that there was like a guy that is a free agent. There was no market for him at all, and I think it just goes to show now that football is not just about ability and how good you are. The two big things for me are your availability and your attitude. If you've got a good attitude and you're available most of the time, look, every player can get injured, it happens, but some are way more susceptible than others. But if you can prove you've got a good attitude and a good injury record, that's going to put you a long way, and you're going to get better moves than some players that might be a lot more talented than you. But two prime examples there, Dybala and Dembele, essentially free agents. There's no one's interested in them, which is mad.
Athleticism is really important in the game now. I think it's the way people see Liverpool play the game a lot, where obviously a lot of players are very talented, but a lot of them are really, really fit and elite athletes. So it's important to have players who are available most of the time, don't get that injured, because otherwise you're spending money for nothing. You ask any Premier League manager, absolutely any Premier League manager, and I guarantee this would be the case, would they rather have Dybala or Gallagher? All of them will say Gallagher because he's fit all the time and he runs like a madman. And he's, and maybe he's not technically the best player, but he's pretty good and he can get better with that. I think it's probably a lot harder to actually improve your technique in some ways, but it's easy to improve your fitness. Sorry, the other way around. It's a little bit hard to improve your fitness when you're an elite athlete, but it might be easy to actually make that technique a little bit better. So someone who's already very good but not very fit, that might be indicative of actually a mentality issue. As well as, the fact that they've just got brittle bones, I guess. Whereas, someone who's maybe not the best technically, but actually works hard, has the right attitude and is very athletic, it's a lot more desirable for a lot of teams, especially because the seasons are so long now. And actually, there's that classic sort of Chelsea Twitter divide between people who rate Jorginho over Mount and Mount over Jorginho and things like that. That sort of classic debacle. And I reckon that's the cause of it. It's that sort of preference for either more athletic or more technically gifted players.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, before we get into Armando Broja and a couple of outgoings, guys, still almost 70 of us in here, so please do smash the likes. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Really helps me out on the road to 1K before the start of the season. So yeah, click that subscribe button, guys, if you're tuned in now and you haven't subscribed to the channel. Would really appreciate it, mate. Before we round out then, just a couple on outgoings. Armando Broja. Tuchel's been saying that Broja's our player, first of all, and as of now, we have no interest in selling him. I think that's quite telling as of now. Hasn't had the time to assess him in the pre-season. I think it'd be Chelsea. My personal opinion, I've got no evidence. I've got no kind of sources to back this up. But my personal opinion is that Chelsea are open to selling Broja. I don't think that would be a problem. But again, that then begs the question that if we sell Broja, we definitely need to bring another attacker in because there's not really any backup centre forward option. I wouldn't be happy with Raheem Sterling being like the alternative number 9. Yes, he can fill in there for the odd game and be versatile moving across the front line, but as an actual out-and-out option, it's not there. West Ham submitted a 35 million euros bid for Broja, so around the 35 million pound mark. I mean, Oli, what would you do with Broja? I mean, he's going to be assessed in the pre-season, but what do you think?
It's a difficult one because I think he deserves every chance to prove himself in the same way we were talking about Colwill and anyone like that earlier. In fact, he's probably even got more of a platform to be able to prove himself because he was decent at Southampton on loan last season. Fell off a little bit, but he showed what he could do, and that's really important. I think he'll benefit a lot from having really good players around him. It's difficult to see what has been written here. So basically, I'm struggling to actually parse what Tuchel actually means here because he's saying, like as of right now, he's our player, right? Which is true, factually accurate. And we have no interest of selling him. Is that a negotiation tactic possibly with West Ham saying, step your game up, give us more money, or possibly, have us in for Declan Rice in the future or someone like that? Or is it saying, no, we don't actually want him? And, it's important to think about this way because Tuchel has such a hold on transfers this summer. Things that he say do carry weight as opposed to maybe more in the last few seasons that we've had Tuchel or Lampard or any other manager under the previous stewardship because they haven't actually had as much of a say on signings. Tuchel has got the most say on signings anyone's ever had at the club since Conte, right? Easily, and probably more so. So it's really important to, when he says something like this, to actually understand what he means. And it's quite vague, which actually leads me to think that maybe they'd be open to selling him. But like you say, it creates a big hole in the squad in terms of a backup attacker. And to be honest, I wouldn't really want to go into the new season with just Broja as a backup number 9. Like we said, we know Sterling can play there. I wouldn't want him as as one of the only people as a backup to play. I want him to be able to fight for his place among a lot of good players. I don't want him to just be there because he's the only option there. But I do rate him a lot, and I think he's quite a raw talent, and he needs to be sculpted and shaped. So hopefully, he's got a good chance to prove himself in pre-season, and hopefully he makes the best of it.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Like on the face of it, I'd be happy to sell him 35 million pounds. I think that'd be good deal. Yeah, he was okay at Southampton, got 8 Premier League goals. Not bad. Not
That's
amazing.
Chelsea standard if you look at us last season.
What it is. You are right, mate. Yeah. I mean, it's not ripping up any trees or anything, but he was okay considering that was his first season in the Premier League. Obviously playing for Chelsea and Southampton are two different things. You're going to get less opportunities, less time on the ball. Teams are going to play in a completely different way against Chelsea than they are against Southampton. Most of the time, you're going to be playing against very, very low blocks. So yeah, it will be difficult. I think there's a space in the squad for him. We're going to be playing 60 games again this season, 5 substitutes as well. So there's extra rotation there. So there will be an opportunity for minutes, but there's only one way to find out if this guy's good enough, and that's to give him an opportunity. I've got no problem with selling him as long as there's a plan to replace him. We cannot just sell this guy and then no one else comes in. That for me is a no-go. If we can maybe, with West Ham do something cheeky with this deal and kind of knock some money off Declan Rice, maybe, who knows? But yeah, I mean, Broja will get his chance in pre-season, as will all the others, and then Chelsea will take a decision from there, and ultimately it will be Tuchel's decision, and it will also be down to Broja as well. Tuchel can come. This is what people need to realise. If these academy players leave, this is not all on Tuchel. Yes, he might give it the sign-off, but at the end of the day, if Broja comes to him and goes, look, if Tuchel goes to Broja, look, this is my plan for you. There's a place in the squad for you. You might play 10, 15 games this season, but you can be really important for us. And Broja turns around and says, actually, do you know what? No, I want to go and play regularly. I've got X, Y, Z club interested in me. Then that at the end of the day, that's his choice. It's his career. That doesn't reflect. That's not Tuchel's fault. So I don't want to see people come in for the manager, and I will criticise the manager as and when it's due, like everyone should. But don't come for Thomas Tuchel if he's had a conversation with Broja, which none of us are going to be there to listen to, by the way, and he's pitched him an idea, and Broja's turned around and says he wants something else. Chelsea, I firmly believe that Chelsea do everything they can to keep these guys, but they're not going to be able to keep them all. And it's as simple as that, really. So I think, people just need to calm down. If he leaves, he leaves. If he doesn't, then he doesn't. And hopefully he can be a good player for us. But
yeah, I mean, it's important to remember just one last thing.
yeah,
It's important to remember Chelsea hold all the cards here. He signed a
he's
five-year
got a
deal
long
like last
contract.
summer.
Yeah,
Really long contract. So even if he wasn't going to play this summer, he could play next summer. And if he went on loan again this season, as long as we do replace him, like you say, Charlie, because that's the important thing here. It's actually not that big of a loss. I think selling him would be a bit silly, especially considering the amount of money the amount of money it would cost to sell him for only 35 million or so, and he does have 5 years on his contract.
Yeah, he should be getting a bit more.
You should be looking at a little bit more for that. It's not like he's got 1 year left and you're getting him at a discounted price.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I mean, mate, just before round out, I just wanted to ask one last thing. Let me just quickly get to this in the chat. I think you should collab with Almighty Blues FC. He's a Chelsea fan too. Yeah, I'll find him on Twitter and I'll send him a message. We'll try and make that collab happen. Guys, almost 100 of you in here now. So yeah, great figures, doing really well, guys. So again, as I said, smash the likes, run those likes up. Click that subscribe button as well. Help me on the road to 1K before the start of the season. So please do click that subscribe button. Mate, there's one topic we haven't discussed. It's the midfield. Keep it brief because we've been here an hour now. What are your thoughts on the midfield, mate? It's start of the window, I suppose, from the end of the season. It's very much led to believe that midfield was a major priority for Chelsea, other than defence. But other than the obvious, Tuchel's a big fan of Declan Rice. He's a number one target sort of thing. There's been no links to midfield at all, has there? Does that surprise you? Because we've got a lot of players on our books, though. So there's a lot to look at. Players, and it's one of those positions that in midfield, we'd have to get rid of some first before any could come in. There's no space in the squad to sign any midfielders right now.
Exactly. I think there was, look at, what was it, Mateus Nunes from Sporting. I think he's a midfielder, maybe. Yeah. I haven't really looked into that very much.
Box, though. It's not the right
profile. It's not really the profile we're looking at. That's kind of the only profile we don't need in terms of midfield. I think that's the problem. Is I am a little bit surprised that we're not really in for anyone, but at the same time, like you say, our midfield in terms of pure numbers is stacked. You've got everyone from, and especially with the players coming back from loan as well. You've got Kovacic, Jorginho, Kante, Gilmour, Ampadu, Gallagher, Loftus-Cheek, Barkley, just to name 7 or 8 of them for 3 midfield places.
Yeah,
2
if we go.
Yeah, 2 most of the time. And so that's gonna. It's very, very clear that actually we're going to need to shift someone out before someone can come in. But it's more likely, I think, that the focus this season is on the defense and a little bit on the attack. Yeah. Maybe we actually won't see a midfield signing.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people would really worry about that, but actually, I would give the keys to Gallagher, give the keys to Ampadu, and let them see what they can do in terms of filling in for the squad. Because our main issue last season was whenever we needed someone to fill in for the likes of Jorginho, Kante, or Kovacic, actually, we didn't have anyone with that great quality. Loftus-Cheek was, in my opinion, he was actually better at right wing back. You've got someone like he wasn't bad. You've got someone like Barkley, who, let's be honest, is Ross Barkley. So, at the end of the day, someone more like Gallagher or Gilmour or Ampadu can actually fill a role more than you might expect, especially because that's 3 midfielders actually coming in, into the team. So, with any luck, some of them will do a good job. If they don't, then we can go for Declan Rice next season.
Yeah, I think it's one. I'm at one of those with the midfield where if Rice is the clear target, there's no, and all right, it might not happen this summer. I think, I honestly think that later on in the window, we will explore that. Something a little bit more concrete will happen. But right now, it's not the priority. I think it's possible later on in the window. So definitely watch this space. But in terms of the midfield itself, like. We got, as you say, for me, it's the balance that we lack. It's very much, there's one profile that is massively missing, and it's one profile that we desperately need. Is a holding midfield player. But yeah, on Rice, if he's the main target, let's do all we can to get him. If it's not possible this summer, we've got more than enough options, in my opinion, to get by until next summer. There's no point just signing someone for the sake of bringing a midfield player in. If Rice is the main target, let's wait 1 year. And then go again and do it, rather than just bringing someone in for the sake of it. It's not, for me, that doesn't make sense. But final ones, Gallagher. I mean, 2 players you touched on. who do you see out of the kind of the returning loanees having the most prominent role in the squad this season? Do you very much think it's Conor Gallagher and maybe Ampadu as well?
I think people sleep on Ampadu because I think he's had loans out of the country and he's not always
Yeah,
been like the greatest when he played for like Brentford and stuff. He was excellent for Venezia last season from everything
he's
I've
very
heard.
good.
And he really can fill a role. So I'd expect to see him play a lot. Whether he's like the standout player, I think he might be the most surprising one. The person who I want to see succeed more than absolutely anybody is Billy Gilmour. I
Yeah,
want, after his poor loan at Norwich last season, I guess it just wasn't. It just didn't happen the way we all thought it was going to happen, with Norwich playing more attacking football and Gilmour being good at passing the ball. It just kind of petered out for him, and he wasn't selected very much. So, Gilmour strikes me as someone who needs to have those quality players around him in order to play well, which he proved he can do. In the season prior. So if I wanted anyone to come in and I think Gallagher's the most likely to be the standout one. Ampadu will be sort of the sleeper pick for that, but the one I
yeah,
want is Gilmour.
yeah. It's so tough, isn't it? Like, 'cause you look at it, there's just like, as you say, with how many midfielders we've got, and potentially, well, a maximum of 3 spaces, realistically just 2. It's going to be tough for these guys to break in. I would expect Gilmour to go out on loan again. I think Conor Gallagher, out of him and Gilmour, has probably got a much bigger chance of being in and around
Tuchel
the
really
squad.
rates him.
Yeah, I think it's got a big chance, Gallagher. I think that's what I'm really looking forward to on this tour of the States, is seeing how well Conor Gallagher does. I think that's good. That's going to be telling. But yeah, Gilmour, again, a lot of talent. We've seen him play so well for us, despite him having a slight stature. He has played well. But I just, for these guys, he's a good footballer. Like, with the spaces we've got and the quality we've got, it's hard to see him where there'd be regular game time for him to go and develop his game. It's a World Cup year for Scotland. He's going to want to be playing regularly. Is he going to get regular minutes to keep him sharp for the World Cup for Scotland? He's
maybe not, but you could see him playing that.
Yeah.
You could see him playing that Jorginho
Yeah,
role.
he's the closest we've got to that Jorginho role in the squad in terms of profile. 100%.
And Jorginho was in and out of the whole,
Yeah.
in and out of the 11 all season last season with
Yeah.
injuries and problems like that. So, there is minutes for him. I think there are chances for him to play, but I think it's much more likely someone like Gallagher is going to be picked over him.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's definitely outgoings to take place in midfield as well, because we can't go into the start of the season having Kante, Loftus-Cheek, Gallagher, Gilmour, Jorginho, Kovacic, Ampadu, 7, 8 names, just reading them off. Some of them are going to have to leave, whether it's loan, whether it's permanent. There's going to be outgoings in the midfield. If there's going to be incomings, I don't know. We could talk about this all day. Let me just get to a couple of things in the chat before we round out what we got here. We can't be selling our best players only to be buying them back with, I'm not sure, exorbitant. Never heard of that word before. Every day's a school day. Amount in future. None of Chelsea's players last season scored as much as Abraham, and we sold him for peanuts. I think we got 40 odd million quid for Abraham. And yeah, he scored goals in Roma. But again, for me, this is one point that I think a lot of people miss, is that playing in Serie A and playing for Roma, it's completely different to playing in the Premier League for Chelsea. Abraham did score goals for Chelsea, yes, but you can't just, you can't form your argument about, he scored goals for Roma this season just gone. So if he stayed, he would have played exactly how he did for Roma, and he would have scored the same goals.
Otherwise, Lukaku would have been a success.
It doesn't work, and it's the same thing. People saying, Lukaku was so good, all those goals in Serie A. And then when he came and he failed, it's because he was playing in Serie A. Yeah, it's the same people that are then saying, we should never have sold Tammy. Look at what he's doing in Serie A. But you battered Lukaku because it was Serie A. Yet when it's Abraham, it's different. There's no logic to the argument. I don't get that. Jacob, are we watching the match later? No, UK time 3 a.m. and it's against Club America, and I'm not getting up early doors to watch the likes of.
I value my sleep, Jacob.
Yeah,
no,
I don't want to see the likes of Batshuayi kicking a football about. It's not the one, not at that time of the day.
I already have nightmares about that. I don't want to see it in real time.
We have to be realistic, going from third to first in one transfer window. Yeah, no, definitely. I've under no illusion that we're the best we'll do next season's third, in my opinion. Right now,
you never know what's going to happen.
You never know.
But because remember, we went from 10th to 1st one season.
We did. We did.
We've bridged bigger gaps than this, but it's in terms of pure points, it doesn't look likely. Does it?
It doesn't look likely. No. What we got here? If Chelsea sell Kante, they are foolish. According to Sky Sports in France, they are close to signing Kante. I think you mean selling Kante in days. Funnily enough, on Kante, 6 years to the day since we signed him from Leicester for, I think, £32 million. I've not seen those reports about anything to do with Sky France.
Arsenal, apparently.
I did see links to Arsenal. I don't
very
know.
Unlikely, in my opinion.
I would say unlikely. Again, Kante, Tuchel loves him, but a massive problem for Kante, as we talked about with Dembele and Dybala. Doesn't matter how good a football player you are, you're useless if you're never available. And the fact of the matter is, Kante, it's not been available enough. And
people don't know how to coach him. People do not understand how to manage Kante because he's so good. That's the problem with Kante. He's so good and he runs so well all the time, forever, that you can't not play him every single game. That's the problem. So every single manager who's played with him, whether it's been Conte, whether it's been Sarri, whether it's been Lampard, and now Tuchel, run him into the ground, and this happens. He gets injured. What I would really like is, if over this summer, hopefully, Kante's had a really good break. That's what he needs. He needs an actual break to get back into the football, and he'll look like his old self. I can guarantee it if he's had a break.
Yeah, no, for sure. He played 45 against Boreham Wood last night. Obviously, I think he was, along with Ruben, the standout players, as you would fully expect. But yeah, seems like a good point to round out. Oli, thank you so much for your time as always, mate. Really appreciate it. Great chat to talk all things Chelsea. Guys, make sure you check out Oli on Twitter as well. I've linked in the description, and it's obviously on his display name on the screen now as well. So please do, that'll do. Please do follow him on Twitter. Guys, thank you so much for getting involved in the chat. Some great numbers tonight. Still over 70 of you in here. Really appreciate all of you getting involved in the chat and tuning in.
Guys, if and just to support Charlie here, listen, like we said, he's on a road to 1K. He's got an absolutely brilliant show here. I love being on it. I love being a part of it, and I love interacting with you guys when I am part of it. He's really going to be going places. So there's 70 odd. There was 100 odd of you in there earlier. If every single one of you subscribed, we'll get him well on the way to a K.
Mate, thank you so much. Guys, do what Oli said. Still big numbers in here now as we round out. So on your way out, please do smash the like button and please do click that subscribe button. Really appreciate all your support. The shows will keep coming throughout the pre-season, right up until the start of the season and all the way through next season as well, as hopefully we have a successful season. But yeah, Chelsea kick off their campaign tonight against Club America. I'll be back in the next day or so with a bit of reaction to that game and any further transfer news. But until then, guys, take care, up the Chelsea, and be sure to smash that subscribe button on your way out.